tonight, as the IDF pushes ahead with its plan to eliminate Hamas in Rafah, a warning that it won't solve the root problem.
A problem that both of us want to solve, which is making sure Hamas cannot again govern Gaza.
What does the future of Gaza look like once Israel's invasion ends? Plus, the legal trials of Donald Trump. His former fixer takes the stand in the former presidential criminal hush money case. And
China has a strategy. They call it disintegration warfare.
Beijing may not want a physical war with the U.S., but it's waging a battle of a different kind. A look at China's threat to America. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Hundreds of thousands flee Rafah ahead of a full-scale IDF invasion. Good evening, and thanks for joining us for Faith Nation. In Washington, I'm Caitlin Burke. More than 300,000 Palestinian civilians are trying to escape the southern Gaza city, but more than 1 million remain in Rafah with few options. It comes as Israel vows to carry out the operation to eliminate Hamas strongholds in the south. Senior international correspondent George Thomas has the details in tonight's top story. George?
Caitlin, as Israel makes preparations to potentially move on Rafah in the south, there's new evidence that Hamas fighters are regrouping in northern parts of the Gaza Strip in areas, by the way, that were once cleared out by Israeli forces, leading U.S. officials to warn of a possible insurgency. It all comes as Washington Post revealed over the weekend that the Biden administration has been, get this, withholding critical intelligence from Israel about the whereabouts of top Hamas leaders. This shows the scene Monday on the road out of Jabalia.
We escaped from the shelling and missile attacks. We couldn't bear all this, so we ran out.
The Palestinian exodus from northern parts of the Gaza Strip intensifying as Israeli forces hit some 120 targets across the area in just the past 24 hours. And there's evidence now that despite IDF efforts to eliminate Hamas from northern Gaza, that fighters are regrouping in areas once cleared out. U.S. officials warning Israel that it needs a viable plan for governing Gaza or face a resurgent terror group.
Israel's on the trajectory potentially to inherit an insurgency with many armed Hamas left, or if it leaves, a vacuum filled by chaos, filled by anarchy, and probably refilled by Hamas.
Meanwhile, in Rafah, some 360,000 Gazans have fled for safe zones as Israel potentially prepares a full-scale invasion of Hamas's last stronghold. The Biden administration, still trying to prevent such an operation inside Rafah, reportedly has withheld critical intelligence regarding the location of Hamas leaders, including Yahya Sinwar, the architect of the October 7th attacks. The release only coming if the Israelis agree to a limited and targeted operation in the southern Gaza city.
This is part of a trend and a pattern. The Biden administration has been trying to control this conflict from day one, whether it escalates or not, how many days, who goes where, who does what. I think this is not the best course of action. This is not the policy. We help our allies against our enemies. That's how it should be.
The Washington Post reporting that U.S. intelligence even contains the precise location of the group's terror tunnels.
So if this is the case, and we know where Sinwar is, and we know how the tunnels look like, so what are we as the United States government waiting for?
The White House facing bipartisan criticism for exerting pressure on Israel and withholding weapons in their fight against Hamas.
For us to step in and say, no, you can't go into Rafah and finish the job, I think it's tantamount to an arms embargo. It's also very similar for us to say in World War II, hey, like my dad's generation, you can invade all the way up to Berlin, but you can't go into Berlin to finish the job.
Meanwhile, Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah warned today that Israel faces, quote, a historical dilemma. In a televised address, Nasrallah said if Israel stops the war right now, it will be a major defeat for the Jewish state. If it continues its military operations, Israel moves into an abyss. A possible reference here, Caitlin, to a long, drawn-out conflict with the terror group.
So, George, if the Washington Post reporting is correct, as we saw in your package, the Biden administration knows where Hamas's top leader is. What's the latest assessment of his whereabouts?
Yeah, according to the reporting by the WP, the assessment initially, the reason why Israel has been targeting and wants to go after Rafah is the understanding that Sinwar is actually in Rafah, surrounded by these 4 Hamas battalion groups. But the reporting is that, in fact, he may have not even left the Khan Yunis area, which is in the northern portion of the Gaza Strip. And according to the Washington Post, the Israeli intelligence does agree with the American assessment as of right now as to where Sinwar is holed up.
All right, George Thomas, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
When Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, terrorists took Israeli Jews as hostages, but they also captured Israeli Arabs and people from other countries. One Israeli Bedouin family was hit especially hard. Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us their heroic story.
27-year-old Bashir al-Zayadna, a Bedouin Arab and law student, saw his life turned upside down by the events of October 7th.
I'm the spokesman of my family here in Tel Aviv, in the family's headquarters and the family's forum of the hostages. I had 4 family members kidnapped on the 7th of October and held as hostages as well.
Bashir's uncle Yosef and 3 of his children were working at the dairy in Kibbutz Cholit when Hamas attacked.
At 7:30 in the morning, they were captured. We saw photos, videos of them being held by Hamas. Very hard images, very hard footage.
Hamas released one son, Bilal, and daughter Aisha after nearly 2 months because they were both under 18.
They told us that they had almost no food. They've told us that they have been staying deep down in the tunnels. They've told us that although the guards of Hamas spoke Arabic and they speak also Arabic, they never shared a word together, never spoke together. All 4 of them were staying in the same room, and their guards gave 4 of them each one a Quran book, which is the Islamic holy book. It was very hard for them to stay in captivity.
Yosef and his son Hamza remain captive.
The father, who's 53 years old, who is still held as hostage in Gaza, has diabetes, and we know that he doesn't take his medications. Hamza al-Ziyadna is 22 years old, also still held as captive in Gaza by Hamas. He has migraines, and he also doesn't take his medication.
Unfortunately, the tragic impact doesn't end there.
I have a cousin of mine, whose name is Abdurrahman. He was murdered on the 7th of October by Hamas. He was murdered alongside his wife, who happened to be a Jew. They believed in coexistence and they could coexist together. They just fell in love and got married. They were just having fun in Zakim Beach. They stayed the night there, and we woke up with a very sad message of them.
Bashir, who lived in Sderot, wasn't there that day.
Luckily, I went to my mother's place the weekend it happened. I was in Rafah on the 7th of October. And now I'm in Tel Aviv because I have been evacuated from Gaza envelope to the center of Israel.
Another relative became a hero.
I'm an Arab Bedouin. I'm proud to be Israeli. I personally saved the lives of 30 people on that Black Sabbath.
Yosef al-Zayadna, a bus driver, provided transportation at the site of the Nova Music Festival. He tells CBN News he had dropped off passengers there earlier and planned to pick them up the afternoon of October 7th.
Around 6 a.m., the phone rang. I saw on the phone the name Amit Adar, the guy that had ordered the transport. He said, "Yosef, save us." I said, "What is it?" He said, "There's a mess, alarms, rockets. There are terrorists." I didn't think twice. I started my car and drove there.
Despite rockets, gunfire, and terrorists, he successfully rescued 30 people, packing them into his 14-seat bus.
All the young people that are brought back, thanks to God, they returned whole. No one was murdered. No one was kidnapped.
Later, Hamas found Yosef's phone number on Facebook, called, and threatened him.
For me, we're all human beings. There are good and there are bad people. And I did this as a person, a human being. In the end, we're one people, and this is our country, and we must live together.
This is a miracle that he went there and got out without any damage.
Bashir says the reaction of Israelis following the attack truly surprised him.
We saw people in Israel from all parts of the Israeli society come together, stand together, and fight together and help each other. It doesn't matter if they were Jews, Arabs, Christians, Druze, Muslims, liberals, Orthodox Jews. You saw all Israelis come together and behave like one big society that lifted one another.
Bashir says he's never viewed Hamas as representing Muslims or Palestinians. To him, it's a radical terrorist organization. That's one reason Bashir believes there's still hope for peace between Israel and the Palestinians.
We should find the common things that we cherish, and we should find focus on them, and we should find a way to heal our wounds and also fight for a better future for both of us, Israelis and Palestinians. What happened on the 7th of October should never happen again, and what is happening right now in Gaza should also never happen again.
Bashir says he wants people to pray for the war and violence to end and for peace in the world. Julie Stahl, CBN News.
While the fight to free hostages continues, here in the U.S., protests on college campuses against the Gaza war now interrupting graduation ceremonies from coast to coast. Over the weekend, Jewish comedian Jerry Seinfeld was about to receive an honorary degree from Duke University when students walked out during his speech. At UC Berkeley, graduates chanted and waved the Palestinian flag.
Honestly, it's truly devastating what is going on overseas. As an Israeli student, I'm extremely saddened by it. But at the same time, this is our graduation. This is our moment right now to reflect and honor all our hard work.
On Sunday, police scuffled with demonstrators outside Pomona College in Southern California. Since April 18th, more than 2,400 students have been arrested at campus protests. President Trump's former lawyer takes the stand, what Michael Cohen's testimony means for the hush money case and the 2024 election when Faith Nation returns. Did Senator Bob Menendez participate in an international bribery scheme involving gold bars, luxury cars, and aiding Egypt? That's what federal prosecutors intend to prove as the New Jersey senator's corruption trial kicks off. Menendez is pleading not guilty to charges he used his influence and power to benefit the Egyptian government. His wife is also charged in the case. Defense lawyers for the senators say, in part, they'll make the case Menendez's wife is at fault. Meanwhile, in a New York court, former fixer Michael Cohen has taken the stand in the criminal hush money trial of former President Donald Trump. Prosecutors will use the star witness's testimony to try and prove Trump was involved in falsifying records to hide hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. The once president's former lawyer does have an image problem, admittedly lying in court in the past, even serving prison time for his involvement in the hush money payoff. Trump's lawyers are playing off Cohen's testimony as untrustworthy. And with that, let's bring in CBN chief political analyst David Brody. David, Cohen directly implicated Trump today. Despite his inconsistency in the past, do you believe his testimony could be damaging for Trump?
Well, I guess the bottom line is it's not up to me. It's up to those jurors. And really, the word of the day, Caitlin, here is credibility. I mean, Michael Cohen, let's be honest with the facts here. He's lied to Congress. He's lied to the IRS. Lied to the Southern District of New York. Today we found out he lied to his wife because he took out a home equity loan and she didn't know anything about it because she was running the bank accounts for the checking account, but not the home equity loan. Now we find out that he made a secret tape audio recording of Donald Trump. Technically, it is legal in New York to do that. It's one-party consent. But he's going around taping phone calls. So, look, it's really up to the jury at this point to decide if he has any credibility, and it only takes one, and this case is over.
Thus far, Trump has benefited politically from his legal trouble. As this case enters its final stretch, and jail time could be the result of a guilty verdict, could that even bolster his campaign as well?
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. Look, I think kind of how do you say, the fix is in, and I don't mean from a nefarious standpoint, but I think the cake is baked. How about that? We say it that way, because the truth of the matter is that everybody has an opinion about this, and I don't think there's many folks. Trump plays the martyr very, very well, and he's got a lot of martyr material here. We don't need to go into the whole weaponization of the DOJ, but indeed, that's going to be the mantra going forward. So, yeah, I mean, look, if he went to jail for this, that's just going to further his martyr credentials and really, believe it or not, in the weirdest sort of way, solidify him even better politically.
Trump maintains that this case and others are politically motivated, and much of his base agrees with that. But what about swing voters?
Well, here's the problem. There are not many of them left. There are some swing voters out there. There's no doubt. We always talk about in elections how, the key is the middle, the independents, the swing voters. Well, let's be honest. We live in a divided states of America. We live in a polarized United States of America. And I think a lot of people have pretty much chosen sides. Are there people in the middle that aren't sure? Yes. Is it dwindling? Yes. I think it's a small minority of folks. I'm not convinced that it's enough to swing either way, positive or negative, for Donald Trump.
All right. CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody, thanks so much for coming on.
You bet, Caitlin. Thanks.
Up next, from cyber attacks to the fentanyl crisis, China is undermining America from within. An investigative journalist exposes the evidence, next on Faith Nation. China is accused of sending fentanyl across our southern border. And that's not all. From undue political influence, sowing social chaos, and even funding the drug trade, an investigative journalist and author is accusing the communist regime of efforts to undermine America from within. CBN's Gary Lane spoke with Peter Schweitzer about his claims.
We've seen many examples of the danger China poses from cybersecurity hacks to the fentanyl crisis. In his book, Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans, author Peter Schweitzer makes the argument that the communist leadership is at war with America, sowing chaos and death without firing a shot.
China has a strategy, they call it disintegration warfare, that says, look, we don't want to have a kinetic fighting war with the United States because that would lead to all kinds of disruption and damage in China. So we're going to try to beat them by not going to war, but by undermining them nonetheless.
Schweitzer sees the Chinese Communist Party employing the tactics of ancient military strategist Sun Tzu. In The Art of War, he teaches an enemy can be defeated without having to fight.
They're doing this by sowing social chaos in the United States. They're literally killing Americans with fentanyl. The Mexican cartels are the junior partners. This is a Chinese operation. And they are engaging in other activities that are designed to tear America apart, and it seems to be working.
As fentanyl has continued to pour across the U.S. southern border, the CDC reports that in 2023 alone, the drug led to the deaths of more than 112,000 Americans. Schweitzer writes that this ongoing crisis can only continue through political corruption. He claims to have found a link between gang leader Zhang Anli, also known as White Wolf, and the Biden family.
White Wolf has a business partner who gave the Bidens in 2017 a $5 million forgivable loan that the Bidens have never repaid. So you literally have 1 degree of separation between the first family of the United States and this poisonous fentanyl trade.
Schweitzer believes this could be a reason why President Biden has not been more aggressive in confronting China on the fentanyl issue.
We need to remember that the bribery and corruption statutes in the United States say even if the actual politician doesn't get a dime, if his family member profits, that in and of itself is corruption.
Schweitzer alleges China has financial ties with members of both major political parties in the United States, including outgoing Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Schweitzer writes that McConnell's wife and former Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao owns a shipping company called Foremost Shipping, which has grown and expanded due to its Chinese business connections.
if Mitch McConnell as a senator were to do or say something that particularly angered Beijing, they could destroy the family shipping business overnight. That's the kind of leverage they have and the kind of leverage that they use.
As to the allegations, a spokesperson stated that Chow had not been involved with her family's business for over 40 years and deemed the allegations as spurious and deliberately malicious. According to Schweizer, his most surprising discovery is the involvement of 2 Chinese billionaires in inciting this division and chaos. He argues that Roy Singham, the founder of ThoughtWorks, and Joe Tsai, the co-founder of Alibaba, have invested millions in radical cultural causes, such as the transgender movement. Alibaba is a Chinese e-commerce company similar to Amazon.
But unlike Amazon in the United States, this is a business that's closely wedded to the Chinese government. What's troubling about these actions is not only their support of the cause, but the fact that they don't actually advocate for these causes in China itself, which leads me to believe that they see it more as a disruptive force in American society than something that they actually embrace as a belief system.
What can be done? Schweizer believes the country must first deal with Chinese political influence in Washington. After that, Americans need to be aware of what is going on. He says if people stay informed and are equipped, they can win this war for American hearts and minds. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Coming up, a rare celestial show seen here in the States. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, God's creation was on full display in the skies this weekend. The aurora borealis, known as the Northern Lights, was seen farther south than it has been for generations. Millions across America were treated to a gorgeous glow in the sky, even as far south as Texas. It was all thanks to a severe geomagnetic storm on the surface of the sun, producing a rare sequence of solar flares. I hope some of you got to see it. I will be honest, I did not stay up late enough. That is going to do it for Faith Nation tonight. We will see you tomorrow.